When we are building a website, some parts of the pages are available for public usage, and some are for authenticated, and some are for admin only. And in a traditional website, it's easier like to manage the user authentication, like to or like authorization and authentication, because like you send some form of request, and the server could have some either cookies or session information or any token, and based on your information, it either lets you access that information like the requested page or content, or it says you are not authenticated or some kind of message. But when it comes to client side rendering, because the routing is managed in the client side, it's a bit difficult, and it's also difficult like to synchronize from one to another component, because these components are independent. Like the main component is independent from the home component, the about us component, and they are they manage their own state. So it's a bit difficult like to synchronize. Even if we are logged in this component, it could it might not be synchronized. Like this authentication information might not be synchronized in the other component, in the main about us or in the sign in. To do that, like to help us with this, there is one API or one like React API that can help us with this synchronization. Or like, for example, if I am signed in here, for example here, if I am signed in here, before I am signing, let me just say this is a protected page, and if the user is not signed in, it's not gonna be accessible. For example, if I go here, it tells me like you're not authorized to access this one, and I need to go back to the login page. But if I am logged in, now if I try to access the protected page, I can now I have access to it because I'm authorized. But it's a bit difficult without the help of like the context API. Let's see how this can help us to synchronize between components, like how we can synchronize our authentication or the authenticated information or our credential. So to do that, I'm just gonna go to how we can build it. The first step is to create a context which will be passed to all the components. So the first one is I imported the create context and user state to store like the credential information. Here I create a context, and this is what's going to be used to synchronize like our credential. And then we create a context provider which will wrap all the components. And then here we store like our credential. For simplicity purpose, I just use here either the user is authenticated or not. And the default one is not authenticated. So we have here a method login, logout, which updates like the state. When the user when the user logs in, this will be called. When the user logs out, this will be called, and this will update to be false, and this will be update the state to be true. So then we return this one. This when we create this context, it has a property called provider, and with this we pass like the login method, logout method object, and this state here, and this will be accessible. And then we return this. The child will be what's going to be wrapped, or these components like this. Each component will be like represented by this child. And then now we're going to export like the provider, which is this component, and the context we created here. Now let's wrap like to be accessible in the all the components, we need to wrap the rest of the component. For example, here, let me just go to the index component. This is our high level component of the application, like high level. So we are wrapping it here. We imported this auth context provider, and we are wrapping all the app component with this auth context provider. When we do this, we can easily access like the login, logout, and like this one, the login, logout, like the value. This will be easily accessible by the child component of the app component, because the child is containing like all this home, main, about us, sign in, like protected page. Based on that, now we can have access to, we can easily access. If I go to the sign in page, for example, this is where I'm going to update either is authenticated here. Here is another like API, I mean React hook, which is use context. Using this context and passing the the context that we created here, this context, by passing this context as an argument, we can easily access like the value that we passed here. These values, we can easily access these values here. So here, for example, I have access to, I wanna get this state is authenticated state, logout method, login method, because I'm gonna use some here. So here, if the user is authenticated, I'm just gonna say logout. Like I'm gonna display this message. If I were to do that, I'm just go to here. This is the user is not authenticated now, and when it's not authenticated, this message will be returned. If the user is authenticated, this will be returned, and we have a button here to log out. If the user is not authenticated, this will be like the form to log in we have here, and when we have a message to log in, let's do that. For example, here the user is not authenticated, so we need to add some information, and we are logged in. When I'm sending this and updating this is authenticated, all the page that is wrapping, like all the page this component is wrapping will be refreshed, and the content will be, the content of this content will be updated, because like all the, when I'm updating is authenticated in this. For example, here I'm updating the, when I'm calling this the logout, when it will come here and then update this if authenticated. By updating this one, the whole page will be refreshed, the whole page that this is wrapping. By using that, we can easily synchronize like the credential information from one component to another component. Uh, for example, here when I'm logging out, this is re-rendering, like the whole thing is re-rendering to update the credential information, like the one that is wrapped here. So that's how this sign-in works. And when I'm updating this, everything will be re-rendered. And then the protected like to create a protected content, what I'm using is here. I'm using the same thing, use context, and passing the context as an argument. And here I just need to access either authenticated. If the user is authenticated, we can let them access to the protected content. We return the protected content. If the user is not authenticated, we send this message: you're not authorized, and go back to the login. And we are using also another hook, which is use navigate hook, which can help us like to navigate to another page by using this hook. This is how we can create and manage, the this is the simplest, most simplest way of handling it. But if we were to say like, for example, here we can say we can access some token from the server by sending REST API or some form of request, and then access that information like the credential information and the user exists, we can let them access to the protected page, and if not, can give them like the message as we did here. That's how we can manage. Like this is the most simplest form that I use here, but that's like the gist of it.